Hey, it's Andrew Hoepfner. 4 years have passed since part 1 of this homemade TED Talk, and fortunately things went well enough with my play, Bottom of the Ocean, Boto, that I feel all right releasing that video to you. And now I come in part 2 with a message that is more focused and hopefully even more useful and exciting, and that message is: immersive theater creators can make their process financially sustainable and supercharge their art by utilizing their performance space as a production studio. Now, step 1 of making this happen for yourself is to obtain a long-term space and to build a beautiful environment inside that space. This is not an easy step, and you can refer to part 1 of this 2-part video series to see the details of how I, a fellow local artist, got that job done. This production studio that you share can be an empty space. Next year, after the show concludes, I'm going to resume renting this gymnasium as an empty box. This production studio can also be a set design space, like those smaller rooms that we're going to be seeing throughout this video. As we said in part 1, there are many advantages that an immersive theater company has in a long-term space. You get to build bigger, more detailed installations. You can rehearse your scenes more, you can edit more. You get to be active long enough in that space to get your performance tight. Step 2, once your venue is set up, put it on PeerSpace. PeerSpace is the Airbnb of venue rentals. Your space does not need to be complete in order to do this. You can build the plane while flying it. Put that space on Gigster as well. Gigster is a strong up-and-comer of these websites. Splacer appears to be fading, but it's probably the number 3 of these venue rental websites. And there are numerous others. You should also make your own .com website, or in my case, a .nyc. Now, what are some reasons to share your immersive theater venue as a production studio? One appealing aspect of this setup is that this has become my full-time job, and it's the best paying job of my life, by a lot. You may remember in the first video of this series that in my old day jobs, I was a piano teacher and a church musician. I was able to retire from both of those jobs in 2020. Another reason to do this, it's wonderful, creative, communal work. All through the year, these beautiful humans from around the world combine their visions with the space I built, and the art I see them make inspires me. But I believe the strongest reason to get into this work is that your time, money, and effort all start going to the same place, your art. For example, I spent a lot of time, money, and effort changing this very crumbly, very uninhabitable corner of the venue into our vine room. In my play, Bottom of the Ocean, the scene that happens in here used to happen elsewhere, and guests would never set foot back here. As the vine room came into being, the value of my space as a rental venue immediately increased. How busy has this venue become as a production studio? In 2019, in the first video of this series, you can see that we had 1 4-star review of our gymnasium space. Today, in October of 2022, we have 486 5-star reviews of our classroom set of rooms, and that's on PeerSpace alone, which is only one of the rental platforms. We facilitated around 2,000 unique rentals of this venue. I'm telling you, we would not have been able to produce Boto at the level that we did without the production studio element of this venue. Something helpful to know about this process in advance is that renters are generally respectful. There are some items in your venue which you should hide during rentals, and you'll learn which stuff. For example, in the beginning, I used to have Bluetooth speakers in my drawers. These speakers will eventually get stolen. I also started by having this basket of washcloths out. Not because it necessarily enhanced the space, but simply because I started by presenting the space exactly as it was in my play. What would happen is renters would spill their fruit punch, wipe it up with a washcloth, and that was less than optimal. You'll learn from mishaps like this what you can keep in the open and what you ought to hide. Another example is renters will never steal your heavy-ass mannequins. Renters won't take a desk lamp. And they even won't take something lightweight and small and unique like this golden octopus, which lives in our shrine. And that behavior of renters is going to make your job a bit easier. You can balance the time between your performance and the strangers who are sharing your space however you want. On one end of the spectrum, let's imagine an immersive theater show that only happens at 8 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. For as much of those mornings and early afternoons, and as much of those other 5 days of the week as the owner wants, that space can then be shared and rented out to the public. On the other end of the spectrum, a show like Boto is happening 6 days a week, matinees and evening shows, so the times when we can share our space is much smaller. As you may be suspecting, the outside rentals are significantly more profitable than performing immersive theater, but performing Boto is more meaningful to us, so we do a lot of both. It takes me 70 to 90 minutes to move the costumes and props out of these small rooms to make way for a renter, and then another 70 to 90 minutes to move those same costumes and props back into the space, and I'm performing those tasks constantly. Here's another way of doing things for you to consider. You can have a set-designed, rentable wing of your venue that is not a part of your immersive theater show. This is for renters only. We use 1/3 of this venue in this way. This is our classroom set of rooms, and it's open at least for a few hours all 7 days a week. Now, our show loves quiet, right? We've got to have absolute silence during our sound bath scene, and for this reason, we don't have rentals while the show is happening. On mornings and early afternoons, we do have rentals back here, and we can go a little longer because it's not so complicated to clean and reset as it is in the show zone. Because we can't have rentals during the performance, this room becomes our backstage for our performers, and having a backstage is useful. Now, let's imagine we had a different type of immersive theater show on our hands. Let's imagine it's louder, that our story takes place in a rave. Now, in this scenario, it might be possible to have our performance and our rentals going simultaneously, which would be, in certain ways, a better business model. This particular use of production studios, not just for film and TV professionals, but for the public, appears to me to be an emerging industry. If you look at part 1 of my video series, you'll see that I didn't fully grasp that this industry existed in April of 2018. But it makes sense, right? More people than ever are creating and publishing their own media. It's their job. And what do these influencers and creators need? Unique environments. I want to also state for the record as we draw this to a close that I don't want you as a viewer to walk away thinking, this abandoned church basement thing, it may have worked for Andrew, but I don't have any church connections. How does this help me? Now, that is a valid reaction. I don't have every answer, but I gotta assume that churches are not the only loophole to finding good, affordable spaces. Maybe your connection is you're in academia. Maybe you work in the real estate business. Whatever you do, maybe you have your own set of unique ins. I'll also note that working with churches comes with its own set of problems. I don't assume that I'm going to be in here forever. For my next project, I may go through the traditional channels instead, renting or buying a commercial space, a warehouse. And lastly, I want to say that I think this idea will work best in big cities. There's definitely room for many more of this type of space in New York City. I'm almost certain that this would work in LA, and I gotta believe that this would do great in places like Atlanta, Austin, Philly, Chicago, San Francisco. Not so sure that this creative model, business model would work in a small city like are there enough musicians and dancers and TikTokers and influencers for this to work in, say, Des Moines, Iowa? Not sure, but I gotta bet that on a smaller scale, you would get some results. So anyway, have fun with this idea. Go make immersive theater. Go become full-time artists. And when you do, hit me up because I want to come see your space and I want to come see your show. Peace.